So let's have a look at the kit. Here we've got a regular basic first aid kit bag. When I open it up, we haven't got tons of items in here, but we can see we've got quite a good selection. Now, any of you that have done a hostile environments course or like a first aid in hostile or remote locations type of course, this stuff will seem very, very familiar. I'm going to go through it in structure as well, and that structure should seem quite familiar. And the priority, now that I've got my hands in the bag, is we're going to look at things for catastrophic bleeding. Now, working in the aid sector, we're very keen that things have more than one use and that they offer good value for money. But there's one thing that we can't really replace too much or expect too many other jobs from, and that's the tourniquet. Now, this is one of the most popular types of tourniquet around in the world. It's the combat application tourniquet. It's the one that we use in all our kits. And this kit indeed has actually come back from my recent travels, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and I'm off to Malaysia again in a few weeks' time. So this is the kit I take with me to those settings. So a tourniquet to deal with any massive catastrophic bleeds from the arms and legs. If it's not on the arm or leg, well, we can't use a tourniquet perhaps. So we've got clotting agents here. Now we use Celox gauze, is our favourite of the moment. It just so happens this kit has got the roller version of it, but there is also a flat pack version, Z-fold, and some of our kits have got that in instead. There is some medical debate about whether it's the clotting agent that does all the magic word, or if it's the or if it's the ramming the dressing into the wound. So just to cover all bases, we have a small bit of packing here. It's just regular gauze that you could use to pack out a wound, possibly sort of multiple wounds, so we'll put those there. So if that's my sort of catastrophic bleeding side of things, I guess the next stepping stone we would move to would be airway. And we're big fans of keeping things simple in our training, and the only airway kind of intervention perhaps that we have in here are these here, the nasopharyngeal tubes, the little ones that go into the nose, as the name would suggest. They're in there at the moment, a bit of a luxury item probably, if I had to be honest about the kit. They do not create an airway, they can't maintain an airway by themselves, they just assist. That's why we sometimes call them adjuncts. They just, because of the passageway, perhaps give you a better flow of air through the person's airway, and are no replacement for decent sort of manual methods or decent positioning of the casualty, i.e. perhaps on their side or maybe even almost face down. Because they're in there, we've also got a little tube of lubricant there as well. So after airway, the next stepping stone is breathing, and the main item we've got in here to do with breathing is a dressing, the Nightingale dressing, an occlusive dressing, and it's in there perhaps to seal the chest wound. That's its main use. But it can be cut up, and you can see it can be folded for storage, which we think is a particularly useful idea, and it can be used on all sorts of other wounds as well. And in fact, on a recent trip to Nigeria, I had a problem with my wrist. I seemed to have some sort of allergic reaction to the Fitbit that I was wearing at the time. Not Fitbit's fault, I must say that right here and now, probably something weird to do with my skin and the humidity. But a small bit of this covered the wound, kept it nice and clean, and no problems with infection. So Nightingale dressings, very good, but it's in here to do with breathing. So after breathing, perhaps move on to circulation. We need to check people over for injuries, so we've got a decent pair of scissors in here, tough cut scissors, cut through clothing. Any of you that have done training with us, first aid courses, that type of thing, will know about the best first aid is naked first aid. So there, so we can cut the clothing off. And then we've got a decent dressing here. And our favourite at the moment is the Olays dressing, modular. So a big dressing in there, more packing, a bit of plastic for covering exposed wounds, perhaps gut wounds, or perhaps even try to seal a chest. But it's a decent dressing, about £5–6 ago, covers a whole bunch of different things. So from there, from C for circulation, we might go into other assessments and checking of a casualty. Well, maybe we end up trying to splint any large wounds or any fractures, and this is inspired by, I think might be the way to describe it, sand splints, which are a bit of aluminium covered in plastic, and this is someone's version of it, taking inspiration from that. Very useful for protecting items inside the kit. If you've got a bigger kit, you can put them on the outside to provide some protection, but simply limited by your imagination. And when it comes to imagination of these, people have done all sorts. Neck collars, arms and so on, but even using one of those and the combat application tourniquet, we can perhaps improvise a pelvic binder. Now, if we're talking about improvising, there's very few problems in the world that can't be solved by the application of some gaffer tape, or in this case Gorilla Tape, if you're more familiar with that as a title. We can now see that bit of the bag's empty. And the only thing that's left in here is one of these, a space blanket. Now, they're in first aid kits to help keep people warm. The idea is you sort of wrap it around them and it will miraculously keep them warm. In reality, it will reflect heat that they're losing, so you've got to get it on them while they're still warm. But again, it can have some other uses. We've looked at ways to improvise pelvic binders with these, and perhaps bearing in mind the other contents of this kit, more usefully, we've even managed to make some stretchers out of these in some cases. Depends exactly on the size of the person. And then there's only one other bit that I've missed out so far, and that is a decent pen. Other brands are available, but Sharpies are our favourites, right on pretty much everything and anything, including political skin. We tell the people that do our first aid in remote areas, hostile areas and so on training, that if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, because we need to get some decent notes made about what's happened to the casualty, so that we can hand them over to the medical staff with some accurate and useful information, and also so that we can kind of collate stuff for reporting back within organisations. All important features.